seconds early. Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll begin our presentation. Many of you recall in, I think it was May of 2021, we had Doug Watson from LinkUp Communications. He joined us and we talked about the C Band Repack. He was telling us all about the filters, the schedule, what's involved, what we're dealing with. And it was Steve Lilly from Radio Urban, probably about a month or 5 weeks ago. He called one day and he's like, "Hey, I think I might have 5G interference. What do I look for?" I was like, "Hey, that's a great question. I mean, there's some obvious things, but we've also heard things from the field about problems with filters and all. So we figured it'd be great to have an update, having Doug back to tell us what he's seen in the field and what we might look for when it comes to interference, especially 5G interference." So Doug, I am so glad you could join us today. I tried sparing you. I figured you'd be busy, but you carved out some time. So thank you very much.
Yeah, we're good. I love doing these things. It's gets me back to radio, which I've always loved. But yeah, it's been a while. I was just sitting here a while ago trying to think when we did that last meeting. It's been a while, and in fact, since then, LinkUp has bought a facility in Denver, Colorado, just south of Denver. We have an uplink facility, a NOC, 24/7 NOC with, gosh, I think there are eight or nine dishes out back. We have an XDS platform on C band and KU band, and it's going like gangbusters. So if any of you guys are uplinking and decide you don't want to uplink anymore, we can uplink for you. It's a cool facility out there. It had belonged to, I think it belonged to Clear Channel initially, and then it was Orbital Media, and we bought the assets and the facility of Orbital Media and took it over. And I don't know if any of you guys know Eric Weiler from Westwood One. Eric is working for us now. He's running that facility out there in Denver. It's a cool place. I didn't even think about it, or I should have put some pictures in. But we have done a few filters. I was just trying to figure out, we've bought probably a little over 300, maybe close to 400 filters. And I think we've installed somewhere between 200 and 300. I don't know how many. It's just, some places will install 12 in one facility, or I think Bruce went out last week and had 12 at one site. Some of the dishes had 4 or 6 on one antenna. And so there's just, you just end up losing track of how many we've done overall, but we've seen some stuff. So let me launch this slideshow, and it's got like 35 slides, but most of them are pictures. So we'll be good. It'll go quick. All right, can you see that? Everybody see that?
Yeah, we got it.
All right. Just a quick update as to what we're dealing with and where we were. That lower section is the receive. C band was 3.7 to 4.2 gig. And the FCC auctioned off 3.7 to 3.8 and left us 8 to 4 as a guard band. And then we've got 4 to 4.2 still. They took $90 billion in the auction, and they have started firing stuff up. I don't know if any of you guys have used 5G on your phones. I've actually turned it off on mine, because when you get to the edge of 5G, it won't do anything, and 4G will still work. So I just completely turned it off on my phone and don't use it at all. But anyway, that's kind of where we are right now. The 5G carriers started transmitting in the top 48 markets after December the 5th of 2021. We saw that quite a bit. And then we've actually seen them in markets that are not in the top 48, because nobody fires up a transmitter when they're not supposed to, do they? We've had some in little podunk towns where somebody will call and say, "I've got something going on," and we get out there and they've got 5G going and they're not supposed to yet. The radio carriers have all been relocated above 4 gig and should have blue filters installed by now. The video downlinks typically have a red filter installed. They left that 3.8 to 4.2 or 4 gig section open. So there was an intermediate kind of level in there, and all the video carriers kind of remained in that area. What we're having now is we're taking red filters off and we're putting blue filters on so they can get them above the 4 gig threshold. We're seeing a lot of those relocating. I've been getting a lot of calls this week from PBS stations. They're moving, all of them are moving their dishes to a different satellite. So that's all starting to happen. It's gonna have to be done. It's got to be done by the December the 5th of this year. So everything is supposed to be complete by December 5th of this year. SES has launched 3 satellites. SES is 2021-22. They got 2 more scheduled to go in about a week and a half. Intelsat has launched 7 new satellites, and I've got those as, there's the Intelsat orbital locations. They're Galaxy 30 through 36, and they're all over the place. And then SES is, this is where theirs are. I said 235. That should be a 135. I fixed that earlier and apparently didn't save it. SES 22 is at 135, not 235. So what does 5G look like? So we're looking at a spectrum analyzer. The frequencies are reversed. So the higher frequencies are on the left end, the lower frequencies. Oh no, take that. I'll take that back. It's the other direction. So you've got the 4 to 4 gig down here that doesn't have a box on it. 4 to 4.2 is these carriers down here that don't have a box on them. The red box, the video carriers, is the 4.0 to 3.8. So those are video carriers that are in the spectrum. The 5G is below that 3.8, and you can see those carriers down there in that 5G. And what this typically looks like on a receiver is your EDNOs will be bouncing all over the place. You may be locking and unlocking, but your EDNOs are not solid. They just up and down, up and down, up and down. We've got a couple of an XR3 meter. You can't peak a satellite dish when there is 5G present because the receive is just all over the place. And so when you put a filter on it, this is what it looks like. So you have your carriers in the 4 to 4.2 gig range, and everything above that is gone. And that's what it should look like. So this is a blue alga filter that blocks out everything from 3.7 to 4.0, and then everything from 4.2 and above. So that's what that should look like. We've ran into some problems where if the 5G transmitter is really close to the satellite dish, we have a couple of other issues that pop up. The filter won't filter it out. And so you end up with something that looks like this. This was a Donco filter on a station here in Charlotte. And so you've got the audio carriers there, the carriers. You've got a section in the 4 to 4, the 3.8 blocked out, but the 5G is still present down there just because it's so close by, it's getting through the filter. We took the Donco filter off and put an alga filter on it and got another 10 dB or so of attenuation, but you can see it's still there. It knocked it down to an acceptable level where the receivers worked, but it's obviously still there. So the transmitters are so powerful down close that the LNBs are just picking it up and amplifying it right on through, even though you've got everything done correctly. Other issues that we have found while we're doing this, several of these we had to move. So we had to move the satellite dish to a different satellite, and we ran into some issues like this one. We were moving it to the west. There's a fence in the way. So we had to take the fence down and move it. And there was plenty of room. If they would have just put the satellite dish, I don't know, a foot to the right, it would have been fine. And there was room to move it a foot to the right, but it wasn't. We had to move the fence around a little bit. Just some things. If you're ever putting a dish in, these are things to consider. Make sure you can swing the arc just in case, because the satellites do run out of fuel and you have to move occasionally. This was another one that we did that once we moved the antenna, the fence shaded a portion of the antenna. And so what we did with this one, we have a couple of steel companies that we work with. We sent them a drawing and made this steel pole that is basically a sleeve that fits over the existing pole, and then the smaller pipe at the top to put the dish back onto. It gets it up about 10 foot off the ground, so we're over the fence. There's a couple of shots of that so you can see what that does. It gets it up over. Ultimately, this antenna had to be replaced. I don't know if the if the snow cover, the heat from the snow cover something, but the fiberglass was warped and this antenna wouldn't receive a good signal. So we ended up having to ultimately replace this one, but we put it back up there on that pole. This was a exhaust vent interference. Same kind of deal. I had to move them to the west. There was plenty of room to move it. If we had moved it the whole antenna a foot to the right, it would have been fine. But that exhaust vent prevented us from moving it to the satellite we needed to move it to. So we bopped down to the hardware store and got a little piece of sheet metal and a couple of 2x4s to make a sheet metal brake and a drill, and created another exhaust vent that was a little smaller, moved the dish where it needed to be, and got it all buttoned up. We've seen this is probably the most interesting one. We did a station in Colombia just a couple of weeks ago, and we replaced the antenna, and they were going to keep the feed horn and so we took the feed off the antenna we replaced and set it aside. The engineer came out to take the LNB and the filter off of it because we put a new LNB and filter on it. And as he was walking away, the guy that I'm working with starts hollering, wait. And he turned around, he's like, what? And he turned back around. There's a green film that comes over the end of these filters to keep them clean inside. And you're supposed to pull them off when you install them. This one still had the film on it installed. And not only did it have the film on it, they didn't put any gaskets on it. They put, I think there were 2 bolts holding the thing together. And you can see through the hole there, you can see it's still there. The film is still between the LNB and the filter as well. The other shot was the feed horn end. And on top of it all, if you look in the lower left corner, there's water inside the filter, inside the sleeve, and running out of the filter there. They didn't put any gaskets in it. They were having all kinds of issues with this antenna and bought a new one to replace it. And after we got it all done and they pulled this off, I started to kind of wonder if maybe this was their whole problem all along. I don't know. But and whoever was doing this for them has been doing them for a lot of their stations. And I don't have any idea if they've done this all around or what, but that green film is just a protective film that has to come off before you install them. Other things that we've seen around while doing these, no lock washers. This entire antenna was put together without any lock washers. That bolt sticking through the dish there, kind of the upper left, that is the feed horn bolt. There's supposed to be a big flat washer there to give it a little structure to hold on to rather than just the fiberglass, but no flat washer there either. And this whole antenna was put together incorrectly. It was mounted incorrectly on the base. It was absolutely terrible. This was another one we saw. This was down in Houston. Obviously the bolt is not tight. Flat washer is not flat. The center ring on this one, if you look up past the rods, the center ring, none of the bolts are tight on that center ring. They're all just loose. You can actually see 3 of them, one in the lower right, and then 2 more in the middle there that are just loose. Center ring is not tight at all on this one. Bees. We've had lots of bees, lots and lots of bees on these antennas everywhere. I know everybody knows to look out for them, but these were in that cap in the center. This was a dish here near Charlotte, and it was still receiving, which surprised me. It had like a terrestrial radar filter on it and the LNB. And when I pulled it off, this was in it. And that nest went all the way through the filter into the LNB. It was about a foot long. It was crazy how big that thing was. Fortunately, there were no bees on it.
Wow.
And then frog. This was Myrtle Beach. But just some things to look out for and things to think about. I mean, that's really all I've got. Just some stuff we've seen around. If you're installing a dish, make sure you can see the whole arc, because odds are at some point you're probably going to need to move it, and you don't want to have to move a fence or there's so much, the pole that we can do those things, but it's a whole lot easier if we can just swing it and repoint it and be done with it. But that's about everything I've got.
Any questions?
comments? Anything?
Oh, back to the close proximity problem. How did you end up dealing with that when it was too close to filter out with the normal approach?
The Alga filter knocked it down enough where their receivers were pretty solid.
Okay.
I remember back when we talked about all this initially, there was the number was like 1,700 feet. They're not supposed to put, if you have a registered downlink, the phone companies are not supposed to put a transmitter within 1,700 feet of a registered downlink. I can't find that number in anything right now. I've tried to go back and look and see where that number is, see if I can find it in the rules somewhere. I can't find that number, but I remember it being 1,700 feet. And I think if you've got a registered downlink, you should have some recourse with the FCC at that point to deal with some of this. And they may just refer you to the phone company, which may be like butting your head against the wall. I don't know. That one, it knocked it down enough where his receivers were okay and he was happy with it.
Okay.
So I did have one up in Winston just a couple of weeks ago. We went, they had 5G interference. They weren't receiving anything. We put a filter on it. It knocked it completely out, but I walked around on the roof and could spot the 5G transmitters. They were close. They weren't real close, not as close as the one in Charlotte. So the filter did take care of some of it. You could still see a little fluctuation, but it was livable for them.
Yeah, well, that's not very encouraging though, when you say they refer you to the phone company.
I haven't. Yeah,
I mean, we know all of us here had to deal with a phone company, and I don't think there is such a thing as a good phone company.
No, and especially the cell phone companies.
Yes.
They seem to be worse than the landline companies to deal with. I haven't dealt with them yet, so I don't have any experience, and I don't know of anybody that has. So I don't know. I'm sorry. I just don't have an answer on that. I don't have any experience. I wish I did. I'd have a little more information for you.
Maybe check back with us in a year or two.
Yeah, because I'm sure there are going to be more.
Hey guys, we had it in one of our markets, and the only recourse we had is we had 2 email addresses we could contact, and the cell companies did get back to us. One of them got back right away. The other one took 24 hours. Not a real positive situation, but they will get back to you.
Did they come out and test it all? Would they come out with anything and look?
They did in this one instance. They did come out, and it ended up being a mistake in the FCC database. The site had the wrong coordinates, and so they built the site in another location. There we had another station that actually has one in their backyard, and they had reduced power on 2 of the 3 sectors to keep it from interfering. So I'd love to know where that 1,700 feet. That's a great idea. I'd love to find that.
I'm going to go make a little more concerted effort to look, because I know when we originally talked about it, that was in the verbiage. So if you had a registered downlink, the other thing I run into is a lot of people that did not register their downlinks. If you don't have a registered downlink, then you've got nothing.
Yeah. The other thing I learned through discovery and all this is the cell companies actually have 2 different power levels they can operate it with. They have one for in the metro area, then they have one for the rural areas. And some of the folks I've talked with, they don't even know what power levels they're operating at.
Interesting. Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, sad. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Anyone else have questions? I definitely have one, but I want to yield to everyone else.
Yeah, I do. I was wondering, you said if you need an uplink, that you could handle it. How do you go about doing that? Like coordinating an uplink from a station to you, and then you handling the uplink?
If you wanted to uplink on one of the satellites that we uplink to, what we would do is we would set up a link between you and us. We have been using Gates Airs and 2 internet paths. So we have multiple internet providers at our facility in Denver. We would encourage you to get 2 and put them together. I think the Gates Air will stitch them together so that they'll work, but take both paths and be one of them drops, the other picks up. And so you're pretty reliable with that. You would send the audio to us, any metadata to us, we would put the modulator in and modulate it there and uplink it for you at that point. So we've got the licenses, we've got all that. If you wanted to uplink yourself, we can also help you with that. We can get the license, do all the licensing. We can do all the hardware. We can come out and install it for you. I'll probably sell you the space segment as well.
Okay. And we're not doing them the way we used to, and if we do another one, it'll be like quite a while since we've done one, so that's what I was asking.
What we're running into is a lot of stations don't have the engineering staff to take care of an uplink anymore. And admittedly, an uplink or downlink, they're kind of set and forget things. I mean, when I was in radio, I had them, and once they worked, you just left them alone. So you don't go out and check for the things like the bees or that kind of stuff, make sure the feed horn cover's clear and that kind of stuff. So it's been interesting touching all these that haven't been touched in years and finding all the stuff. We've discovered that feed horn covers, which a lot of people seem to like, are just basically a nice place for bees to build nests. And with the new filter on it, they typically won't fit anymore. So things like that. But I understand the set and forget. There's other things that are more pressing and that you have to do. And so I get it, but it's nice. It wouldn't be a bad idea to go out and check it every once in a while just to make sure. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Doug, we've heard through the past year, there have been some filters that just didn't perform properly. Maybe it was a bad batch. I don't know. And then it sounded like you were talking about certain recommendations for certain situations, filter types. Is that still the case?
We bought the Alga filters, and Alga went through several iterations where I don't know what happened to them. They had one batch of filters that didn't get painted correctly or cured correctly, and the paint just flecked off. The first batch we got from them and we started installing, we would see 3 and 4 and 5 dB of loss when you installed it, which was just, I'd pull them off and put another one on. The first batch that we had through was they were terrible. And we've sent a bunch of them back to them. Should typically see a half dB to maybe a dB total, but we've stopped with the Alga filters. Microwave Filter Company makes some as well, and they've seem to be a better filter for us that we're using now. And so anytime we do one now, it's a Microwave Filter Company filter. I think I still have a few of the Algas on hand. They're the same price, and I've also had a couple of places that call us to have us come put it on because there's we can take and do a proof of the antenna with the XR3 meter, and it'll run through all the transponders and show you that everything is working correctly. And we can then store that and send it to them. So you've got paperwork if it ever comes up that you can show that look, it was working, was installed and working at one time. And so they'd have us come install them. And I don't want to diss on Donco, but the Donco filters, one of the flanges is threaded. So there's not a bolt that goes through and you put a nut on it. It's the bolt goes into the flange, and they were very difficult to install. And then that one that you saw that I had pictures of, it didn't perform as well as the Alga. It was about a 10 dB difference between the Alga and the Donco filter. I don't know where Donco got theirs. I don't know who made theirs. There were specs that were out to make them. And I know that Alga and Microwave Filter Company were part of the groups that were recommended by the radio consortium that was doing all the stuff initially with the 5G stuff. But there was the red filter for a while that the video folks put on that filtered out everything below 3.8 gig. And that's when they started firing up. That was all supposed to be done. Everybody was supposed to be moved above 3.8 gig by December the 5th of 2021. And so now everybody's supposed to be moved above 4 gig by December the 5th of this year. So we had 2 years to get things moved from that all those satellites had to be launched. There was a bunch of movement, things getting moved around. And so now by December 5th of this year, everybody will have to be in that 4 to 4.2 range. So that was where those red filters are coming off. That's a lot of what we're doing right now is taking red filters off and putting blue filters on to get them above that 4 gig range.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, hey, this was really insightful. we have a recording of the video. I'll upload it to our private YouTube page, and I'll send it to both chapters. And anyone else out there interested, just send me an email to mfriedman@vpm.org, and I'd be glad to send you a link, because I think there are people outside of our chapter with us today. So thank you very much, Doug.
Quite welcome. Anytime you guys can call. Sure, Mike's got my contact information. If not, it's Doug@linkupcommunications.com. Shoot me an email. Happy to help.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'll send all of your contact info when I send the email, and I attest Doug is always there. He's always returned my calls, always replied to an email. He's good people.
Oh, appreciate it.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, guys. Y'all have a
Thank you,
good day.
Doug. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you, Doug.
All right. See everyone later.
All right, take care all.
Bye.
Okay, chapter 54, if you want to hang on a little bit, we'll call our meeting to order.